Hey everyone, I'm Mel Kramer from NPR, Scram from The Guardian. We're going to talk about analytics and how we both created analytics dashboards for our newsroom. I saw some people taking pictures of my slides earlier. You don't need to do that, it's a Google Doc, I put it online. At NPR, we publish all of our social and digital strategy online at this Tumblr, socialmediadesk.tumblr.com. Every day, we publish an internal newsletter with different things that people are doing in our newsroom as well as other newsrooms. And whenever we're thinking about something in the digital and social space, we make it public. As public media, we feel like we should do that. So you're welcome to read this, and all of our slides and all of my notes and every speech I've ever given is online. I'm going to talk today about how I worked on a team at NPR to create our analytics dashboard. We were given initially 6 weeks of developer time with 2 developers, and we were told by the end of that you have to have a minimum viable product. So I'm going to show you what the dashboard looks like. The screenshots are included in the presentation, so you don't need to take photos. And if you would like to talk to our developers or anybody on my team, we're happy to share everything we know with you. So this is the main page of the dashboard, which you have to be on the NPR VPN to access. And we wanted to give our newsroom a sense of analytics without overwhelming them. We're also a nonprofit and public media, and we couldn't necessarily afford a third-party solution. And some of the third-party solutions that we looked at were just really complex and really overwhelming. So when we set out to build our own dashboard, we really wanted to think, what could we build that would have the people in our newsroom be able to take meaningful action within 6 weeks of developer time? So I'm going to just show you the dashboard, and then I'll go through our thinking. So this is the main page that you get to if you work at NPR. And this is also an email that goes out to everybody every day. And it basically gives you an overview of the pieces on our website yesterday. We're using Google Analytics, so nothing in our dashboard is in real time. And when you see the Guardians, you'll see that it is in real time. But we wanted to give people a sense of whether our traffic was coming from social or through referral traffic or through our homepage. So we developed this number that we call the social boost, and we based this off of conversations that we had with folks up at BuzzFeed. They have a very similar number on their dashboard, which is also public. And this gives our newsroom a sense of how much traffic is coming from social media versus how much is coming from not social media. Social boost refers to the percentage increase of traffic on a particular story or on our website because a piece was posted on social media. We next give people the top 50 stories on our website yesterday in terms of traffic. Anything that's an archival piece is highlighted in yellow. So the top piece 2 days ago was from 2012, and people can very easily see that. If they click on the story title, it takes them to the dashboard view for that story, which I'll show you in a second. We also let people in our newsroom see what devices people were using, how people got to NPR content, which social networks drove the most traffic. And then I learned how to code as part of this project, and I made a little bookmarklet so that people could access the dashboard without having to visit it directly. So when you go to a story page, this is what it looks like. So this is a story, and you can see how much attention the story is getting. Light blue traffic is coming through social media, dark blue is coming through our website and referral traffic. Then we break that down even further for people. How are people getting to the story? Which social networks were people using to get there, or how are they getting there through our website? Who shared the story on social media? And this was because I get a lot of questions in the newsroom from people who say things like, you know, I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not sure if I have to use social media and I only have 5 minutes, what is the best way to do that? And this is a very organized approach to say, these are the people who are talking about the subjects that you cover. Maybe you reach out to them, maybe you favorite their tweet, maybe they're a source for a future piece, maybe if it's someone that our development office might want to talk to, we make a note of that, but it's so that the reporters can see who is talking about their work. Then we have a section, who linked to the story, so which websites linked to the story. And then did people interact with the audio or video on our website? I work for an audio news organization. We're very concerned with where we place the audio on our website so that the most people are listening. So if we get a sense that a certain type of story is resonating particularly well in terms of audio, we might move the audio around on other pages. And then we also allow our newsroom to see this at the blog or topic level. So editors in our newsroom can assess how their stories are doing at the blog or topic level. And that's basically it. That's our dashboard that we had 6 weeks of initial time to develop and working with that team. I should say that we didn't come into this project with any kind of preconceived notions of what should either be in this dashboard or what it should look like. My background, I started at NPR in 2006 as a Kroc Fellow, then I was a humor writer for Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. I launched and ran web applications at Fresh Air with Terry Gross. And then I created my own job at NPR a year ago where I developed products for the newsroom to make people more efficient in the digital and social space. So my background's not in analytics. I kind of went through an analytics boot camp to become well versed in it, but my background's in humor writing. And I should say that NPR as a nonprofit public media news organization doesn't have a lot of money. We can't hire consultants for projects. We don't have a team of developers that can work around the clock on this. And we weren't sure what to build. And I've heard from a lot of people that say things like, you know, I don't have developers in my newsroom. I'm not sure what to do. I don't have consultants. We simply asked other news organizations for help. I wrote to people at the New York Times, The Guardian, BuzzFeed, The Huffington Post, The Atlantic, USA Today, Vox, and said, I don't have any money. I'm about to create an analytics dashboard. Could you tell me everything that you did and know about analytics? And all of them said yes. So I took a field trip to New York and one in Washington, and I visited all of these other news organizations, and they pretty much revealed everything that they were up to. And in return, we invited them to NPR at the conclusion of our project, had them meet with our developers, showed them all of our code, told them everything we were thinking, and planned to continue the conversation because this is something that we should all be working on together, which was really great. The other thing that we did as part of the process, which I think is key to making sure that if you're going to do something like this, it's successful, is we relied extremely heavily on our own newsroom for their feedback and included them from day one. We did focus groups with the people in our newsroom and said, what would make the most sense to you? What do you hate about looking at Google Analytics? What do you find overwhelming? If you had one piece of information that you could use to better make decisions, what would that look like? And I talked with everybody from the interns in my news organization to the vice presidents, to people who are in their 70s who still work there, to people who are digital natives, to people who use the internet because they have to. And we sat all of these people down and said, like, how can we help you if we have 6 weeks to make something that works for you? And we have continually gone back to those people and asked for their help and guidance. As part of the project, we also launched this blog that I run. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but in order for something like an analytics dashboard to be successful, you have to create a culture in your newsroom of sharing what people learn. And oftentimes, I think in newsrooms, we silo information. We don't share with our colleagues. We don't share with people outside of our news organization. But at many organizations, departments don't share with each other. So I created a newsletter. It was really easy. I put everyone on it, and I said, I'm just going to praise people who are doing good stuff. And if you're doing good stuff, you need to email me and let me know so I can share it with the rest of the building. And we started that last November. I now have 25,000 external readers on this thing. It's a Tumblr. It's the worst designed thing on the planet. As you see, it's just blocks of text. But every day at NPR, everyone receives a newsletter of good things that people are doing within our news organization. And by doing this, we created a culture of sharing and knowledge. And when you learn something, you share it with your colleagues. And that has made our analytics dashboard successful because when people notice something in the dashboard, they share it with the rest of the newsroom. That's pretty much, I mean, whatever product you're going to be designing in your own newsrooms, that is key. And the reason we decided to make it public is because we can now ask other news organizations for help because we're helping them every day. And we talk about things that we struggle with as a news organization on that blog, and we found it really successful to be just completely transparent about our process. And I should say that's something that you know, I don't think is accepted in every newsroom. I don't think it was always accepted in my newsroom, but I'm really lucky that everyone at NPR has allowed this kind of transparent thinking to flourish. The other thing that we did through our process was we sketched out what are called user stories or personas. My background's not in design, so I had never heard of this before. But basically what you do is when you create a product, you think, who's going to be using this and how are they going to be using it? And you actually physically write these down, which takes a lot of time. But the time that you spend up front in doing this and thinking in this way means that if you have a limited amount of developer time, you're using it in the right way. So I sat down with my colleague Wright, who is my coworker and my partner in all of these projects, and we said, as a person who is like a homepage editor, if I see something happen on the dashboard, then I will do this. And we wrote down about 100 of those phrases. And that was really helpful because then when we sat down with our designer and our developer, we were able to say, this is what we would like you to do, and this is what we would like the outcomes to be. So I talk about how to make user personas, which you can look at because it's all online. And then we went around the building and we asked people, like, what would you need out of this dashboard? And people basically said, I can't add anything new to my workload. I have to file audio stories, I have to file web pieces, I have to do social, I have to take care of my kids. You have to take something away from my workday in order to add something, which is something to think about as you're thinking about launching products. What can you save people time on? And if you're the person in your newsroom who can save people time, number one, people love you, and number two, they then want to help you out. Then after we launched the dashboard, we said, we don't know if we're going to get any more developer time on this because this was a concrete project. But if we do get more developer time, what would you like to know? And these are the things that from people in our newsroom that they really wanted to know. People didn't want a ton of new information. They wanted to be able to make comparisons, and they wanted to be able to share what they've learned. The entire process of creating something in our newsroom, I think, worked because we were extremely intentional about the project. As somebody who codes, I often deal with documentation that other coders have developed. And a lot of times people write code and documentation for other people who are programmers and not for other people in their newsrooms. And in order to make a product that works, I really think we need to be intentional about our documentation and about thinking about how to create a product that makes sense, which is why in our dashboard, you can see, we have these questions. What were the top stories yesterday? How are people getting to content? But they kind of guide people to how to use the dashboard. It's basically instructions designed disguised as questions. And I think a lot about language and intentionality of design. I don't want to create a product that is off-putting or that people in my newsroom who are non-digital natives find offensive in some way. And so they're the people that we target to include in the process as we create these tools. That's pretty much it. I make everything that I do very, very transparent and put it online. If you want to find out more, I tweeted out the link to this. My name's M. Kramer on Twitter. If you want even more than that, just...
We're going to do questions now, so I think we're going to sit down. And there's a mic there. If you want to ask any questions, please do. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Sarah Gu from Pew Research Center. Melanie, I wanted to ask you about, I thought it was really interesting when you said that you created these personas about, I have this job, I'm going to see this on the dashboard, and then I'm going to take this action. Can you give some examples of different actions that people have taken and what the result is? The action always to then try to boost traffic for a particular story or improve the user experience, or can you just talk a little more about that?
So initially, we interviewed people from every department across NPR and said who would be using this dashboard. So an example would be like, if I'm a homepage editor and I see a piece doing really well on Twitter, maybe I put that piece on Facebook. Something as simple as that. Or if I am an editor and I notice a piece from our archive spiking, maybe I update the headline and update the related links so that piece becomes even more relevant to our audience. A really good example of this was we had a piece on the Sunni-Shia split that started to get a lot of traffic 2-3 months ago when that was back in the news, and somebody noticed that that was trending on our dashboard, and our foreign desk editor went in. The piece was published, I think, in 2007. Somebody had died in the interim. He mentioned that the person was now deceased. We changed the headline to reflect that it was something that we had posted 7 years ago and republished it, and it was a way for us to be relevant and timely today and not have to pump a lot of work into something because we had already done it. And we do a lot of really good explainers that we do continuously again and again and again. And if there's a way to decrease the workload to make them relevant, it means that we still have timely, relevant content out there today.
Hi, Josh Belsman from NBC News. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your work and talking about it. I think it's a really invaluable service to share your learnings and process. I'm interested, you talked about how this was kind of a crash project, a few weeks, a few developers, but as we know, these things never just end. They always need maintenance. So what kind of buy-in do you have within your newsrooms and at other levels to have ongoing development support if APIs break and new features are needed and the rest? I was also interested in what APIs you're using to get tweets and Facebook page posts about particular links coming in, and if those are services you're paying for or were able to find a free supply.
I have to write formal pitches for developer time whenever I would like to use a developer at NPR. It's about a 10-page document, and I have to detail like 30 questions about what I'm going to do. And then I might have to wait 4 or 5 months to get a developer for a week or 2 weeks. So we don't necessarily start a project and then put continual resources against it forever. So what that requires you to do is say, okay, if I only get 2 weeks for a project, what is the most that I can get out of that 2 weeks? Because then somebody else needs to use that developer. And I work at a nonprofit. We're just probably not going to get a lot of developers. We are thinking about ways to either partner with universities or the open source community there, or classrooms, so that we could potentially work with more developers. But that's just the situation. For the Twitter API, we just use Twitter. For Facebook, we used CrowdTangle, and we brought that in through that API.
So for us, the story's slightly different. So we started as a hack day, and we've always kind of been a little bit under the radar. I mean, nowadays we have full support for what we're doing right up to our CEO. It's kind of interesting because actually we talk a lot about, well, should this now be an official project and going through, it's so important to us now. Should we go through our official channels and do all of the kind of normal stuff we do? Actually, it seems to be working quite well, just a small team engaging closely with people down the newsroom. I think as an engineer, I would so often I've heard the problem of the difficulty of getting hold of developer time, and I love the sessions and talks we hear around teaching non-developers to do some development work. As a developer working for a news company, the reason I joined that company is because I love news. It's because I love journalism. And for me, having the opportunity to work closely with the newsroom quite differently to how I've done previously has been so exciting, and is why I've come to work every single day for the last 3 days. So find somewhere in your organization there are engineers who just want to do this kind of stuff.
I learned how to code as part of this. I mean, I'm now pretty fluent in Python and Django, and so I help out where I can.
Hi, I'm Todd with NCM Magazine. Great presentation today. I'm wondering if you know if either of your organizations is paying, let's say, to promote posts on Facebook, and if so, if your dashboards are able to determine how much of your traffic is coming organically versus because those posts are being paid for.
We don't pay for any of our social.
So for how much coming from paid posts on Facebook? Yeah, we don't pay very much on Facebook. We did. So actually, on the Twitter API, we found it's fantastic working with Twitter because it's actually really easy to direct referral to resolve referrals down to the individual tweet that caused that referral. Unfortunately, Twitter is a fairly small traffic driver for us. On Facebook, it's generally pretty opaque. For us, what we have done is simple stuff around putting simple tracking on the URLs we post onto our brand pages, so at least we can tell the difference between organic traffic and traffic that we've chosen to drive. That's actually really helping us to understand the effect of our brand pages better. We'd probably, if we were paying for posts, we'd probably do the same thing for those.
Good day, Tom Mallory from UT San Diego, the artist formerly known as the Union Tribune. 2 comments, one leading to a question. I wanted to tell those of you who are driving culture change in your newsroom, we have found no bigger change in culture than providing analytics to staffers. Right away, it speaks to their competitiveness. They want to succeed. You give them that data, they act on it. As you mentioned with the guy learning how automated tweets don't work. The comment leads to a question is, when we did this for our newsroom, and we have boards on the wall, we have emails that go out, my boss chose to focus on visits rather than page views, because his previous experience is showing people visits turns them into page view sluts right away. 13 things that'll change your word. Do you have concerns about views over visits, or is visits too complicated to explain to people, you think?
We also put data in our dashboard for how many pages per visit are coming through for each of the referrals. So let's say Facebook sends an average of, they visit 1.2 pages, and Tumblr sends 2.5, and search traffic sends 2.5. So we do include that in the dashboard because we think that's really relevant. I'm not taken with page views. I don't think that is a really good metric at all, especially when we don't want the person in our newsroom who's covering Syria to be compared to the person who's covering Justin Bieber. And that if you set something up that drives people in that direction, that would be terrible. If we do get more development time on the dashboard, the next thing we're going to include will be comparisons within a topic. So you'll be able to say, out of all of the pieces published in Syria in the past 3 months, which one did the best, and why do you think that is? And then we can learn from that, because one of those did the best.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because we've discussed this huge amounts. To be honest, the reason we didn't focus on visits was actually it's a lack of understanding of what that metric meant. So many people don't understand enough around how the 30-minute timer works, how actually different analytics providers choose to reset the visit at different points and different times. And actually there's quite a lot of interesting different ways in which you can, that metric distorts as well. So I completely agree that page views is an absolutely distorting metric, but at least it's an understandable one. In terms of comparison, I totally agree with that, right? We're not saying that every piece of content that we produce, we expect to have 500,000 page views, right? The piece that we write that's a great piece around social workers in one of the northern towns in the UK is not going to get that traffic, but it's still a great piece. What's important is to make sure that piece has a chance to thrive, right? If we write that piece and we care about it and we love it, we don't just chuck it on the website and hope that somebody can find it, right? We need to make sure that the audience we've written it for can find it. So what we're looking for generally is the pieces that we didn't give a chance because we gave them no exposure at all, right? That's the, if you like, the crime. It's not hitting 500,000.
I just want to say one more thing. I used to do everything online for Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and the metric that we used when I worked there was when someone died was a quote from Fresh Air used in the New York Times obit. That was our metric of success, because that was directly correlated to what we were doing online.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
One thing I would add, though, is one thing we're working on actively right now is tracking attention minutes. So we're tracking it, we're just working out how to present it. For me, I think that one is the metric that is actually interesting and actually gives you some reality of engagement.
Hi, I'm Kristen Lee with the New York Daily News, and I was just wondering if you could both expand a little bit more about how you trained the people in your newsroom to use this information. I loved your idea about making personas, but I worry that not everyone is going to make the connection of, okay, I see this on the dashboard, and then that means I can do this to improve it.
I have a desk somewhere in my building, but I don't sit at it. I hold open office hours every day, and I roam the building. If people see me, they know that they can ask questions. Because we have this internal newsletter where we praise people and people have now been trained essentially to, when they see something online or they see something in our newsroom, they share it, and then it goes back out to the rest of the newsroom. And that also happens with the dashboard. So yesterday, NPR broke the news that the Attorney General was leaving. We immediately sent the dashboard out to the newsroom and said, look at what is happening with our traffic. And you have to be, it has to be constant. The way that our dashboard is set up right now, you have to be on the VPN, so people can't access it on mobile, which is really a shame for us right now, because we would love people to be able to be at home and looking at it on their phone when they wake up. They do get an email every day with information from the dashboard, so it's just continually training people to look at it.
I think So one of the interesting for us is that our traditional analytics packages, before you were granted a login to them, you had to sit down for an hour's one-to-one training with somebody to teach you what to do and make sure you don't misuse the numbers, or make sure I don't know what it was for actually, And so one of the key things for us, so our dashboard, we use Google login to do it. So we've got a Guardian email address. You can log on and use the dashboard. You can do that from any device on your phone, inside the office or outside the office. That was actually kind of by accident, but we realized subsequently that was a really key driver to success. In terms of training, I would say we're largely ad hoc on that. What we try to do is make sure that the data we're presenting makes sense and people can access it. Both me and my team and Chris Moran and his digital audience team spend a lot of time talking around, both producing summary emails and going around and talking to editors and journalists around the building. Generally, we found it's more useful to try and make the tool as easy to understand as possible. And I think from seeing Mel's tool, I think we've got some way to go on that. I think it's great.
And just, I mean, I don't think there are many very good tools out there to share what you've learned. Mm-hmm. I was meeting with somebody yesterday from Stanford's design school, and I said, you know what I want? I want like an annotated Pinterest. Take a screenshot, what did you learn? And then that entire thing of information goes onto either an internal or external blog. We should be sharing things that we notice and things that we learn, and everyone in my news organization has a different skill set. I work with people who are brilliant and have been working in news since the early even before that. They've been working in news for decades, and they notice things that I don't notice, and they should be able to tell me that in an easy way. So if anyone wants to develop that tool, that would be awesome.
I'm so going to steal that idea.
Yeah.
I'm Rob Pecoraro, a freelance journalist for Yahoo Tech, USA Today, and a few other places. Earlier today, Chartbeat's CEO gave a great presentation about trying to measure how you get readers to keep reading in terms of time spent on stories and getting them to but read other stories on your site. Are those metrics that you have in your dashboards now? Because it was funny to see this presentation very much focused on let's go page views first and not so much time.
So as I said, it's something that we're planning to do. So we actually started with page views because we were starting from a point of nobody looking at anything, right? We had no idea of the great journalism that we produced that just went nowhere, right? We had no concept of that at all. And so getting to the point that we're giving every piece of journalism we produce a chance to thrive, for us was a great move forward. And for us, page views helped us get to that point. I am super excited about moving to attention minutes. Probably we'll still do pages, but we're not quite sure exactly how we're going to put that in. I absolutely totally agree that the quality of engagement is a critical factor. I think one of the things that I'm very, very aware of is, so a couple of years ago, the belief was that if we had exposure of traffic data to editors and journalists, we would inevitably only ever commission pieces about Justin Bieber or about sex, right? Bizarrely, both of those keywords actually we're never going to win the competition on Google for, so they're not necessarily traffic winners for us anyway. But it's not true, right? Our editors are better than that. They know better than that. They can see the fact that, yeah, this is a great piece, and the fact it got 10,000 page views is great for that piece, right? It's not the absolute numbers that matter. And I think having that kind of realization that it's not about chasing numbers, but the numbers are one input to the editorial process, I think is critical to approaching analytics. But I'm excited about attention minutes.
And you think your measurements of that are actually holding up in terms of accuracy?
They're holding up in terms of?
Actually counting that the reader is reading and not just leaving the page open while they do something else.
At the moment, because we're just measuring page views, we know that there are some pages that are not getting great readership. That's why that's our next thing to do.
I mean, my next thing, if I had more developer time, would be to look at audio, because I work at an audio news organization. At what point do people stop listening to the audio? Is there a certain kind of audio that people listen to more? You know, are people who listen to audio more likely to do something else on our website? So I'm more interested in actions that people take, I think, on our pages, and we're very concerned with audio.
I think one of the interesting things we've always tried to do is not empower finger pointing, So we have a page that you can go to that shows your content that's been published, public content that's got your byline. That's private to you, right? Nobody else can go and see how your content. We don't do lists of, right, who's the best journalist today and who's the worst journalist today, because we don't think that's helpful. We believe that actually empowering people to move forward positively is much more useful than finger pointing.
Praise is a really good tactic for strategy. I mean, I praise people publicly all the time. Whenever anybody gives me a bit of information, I always mention who it is. I strongly believe in like praising people up and praising people at all levels of your news organization is always just a benefit for moving it forward. And like if you have to make a cultural shift or if you're trying to change the culture of your newsroom, which, you know, I think if you're working in this arena, you are, praise is so much better than any other tactic.
Gideon Bellmaker from the Epoch Times. My question was pretty much answered by the people before me, so I'll just say thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Hi, Charlotte Halle, English editor from Haaretz newspaper in Israel. You've also touched on my question. We use Google Analytics as our number one stats provider, and it has changed our newsroom, and we start our editorial meetings looking at stats, and things are very different. But at the moment, we do not give our writers access to Google Analytics so that they can't, so they won't, I suppose it's a slightly patronizing fear that they'll descend into a kind of ego, vanity, frenzy over, you know, extremely hard work pieces they wrote that didn't mention Bar Raffaeli, because she's our Justin Bieber. But do you think that kind of paternalism is a mistake, that attitude from the editors in the building who look at everything and see everything versus our writers who we protect from the full ugly truth?
Well, I work with, let's see, there's like 1,100 people at NPR. Let's say 500 to 600 of them are bylined people who contribute in some way to our journalism. I'm on a team of 2. I just wouldn't have time. I mean, it's so much, they need to be looking at what they're doing just because we're so resource strapped that it makes us better for them to have access to the information. And I want to empower them. I want to build them up as journalists as much as I can in the social and digital space. And part of that is knowing whether something that they did worked or not.
Yeah, so I think your question was leading me into saying this, but yeah, I totally think that's a mistake. I do think that our journalists and our editors, they need to see the data. Having met lots of our journalists, they're not going to write. Well, you know this more than I do. They're not going to suddenly start writing stuff about Justin Bieber, right? That is not the outcome that's expected. And we're not telling them that the most important thing you do is that everything you publish gets X 100,000 page views, because you know it's our culture, it's our mission to produce content, sometimes regardless of whether people watch it or whether people read it or not. The critical thing is that you've given that content a chance, right? And the best people to fight that their content had a chance on the web is the journalist who's written something and noticed that we didn't post it on Facebook, we didn't post it on Twitter, we didn't post it on any of our fronts. We gave people no chance at all, or we gave it a really duff headline. We gave them no chance at all to consume that content. To me, it's absolutely totally right that the author of that piece should go back and complain about that.
And I also think that like our Shanghai correspondent, his name's Frank, he lives in Shanghai. Frank was recently in DC and he said, you know, I don't have a lot of time to spend on social. I really like knowing who's talking about my pieces. Like that's helpful for me in finding sources and finding people who are interested in Shanghai. It's helpful for me to know who to follow on Twitter. I work with people who have very, very limited time because they're being asked to do more and more and more. And anything that I can give them that says, this isn't this amorphous blob, like you can spend 2 minutes and do this action, is a really good thing to say, to just give them tactics to get a bigger audience for their work.
Okay, thanks.
Hi there, my name is Rosie Grover from the Hamilton Spectator, thespec.com, Ontario, Canada. Thanks for being here. I had a question, Graham. Whether you're using in-house analytics or something like Chartbeat, is there some tactics or some strategies you could suggest for stories that are charting and how we could further boost those that are popular?
How's it boost stories that are trending or get more traffic to those stories?
Yeah.
Loads and loads of things. I mean, to me, a lot of it, the most important thing is create a great piece of content, right? What's going to get people to share and engage and want their friends to read that item of content is producing a fantastic piece, right? All the stuff around that is just about giving that piece a chance, right? So making sure that you're posting it sensibly on Facebook, making sure that you're encouraging the conversation, the community around it, make sure that you've made it easy, and actually, at the end of the piece, people want to share that piece. I don't think that was quite answering your question, but...
Well, aside from like posting on Facebook, Twitter, are there any other ways that you use different other social media or ways to engage readers that would boost or share those stories even more?
Yeah, to me, a lot of that depends on context and the environment you work in. So we publish around 400 items of content a day. They're all from different desks. They're hitting different niches, right? What works for one might be different to the others. And that's why I believe around getting the data in front of the editor of that particular desk so they can see how their stuff did. Is really important, because actually they might know the website that's really great about social working in Barnsley, and that's going to get them great traffic, a great audience for that piece of journalism. My short answer is it depends, but therefore keep trying lots of stuff and measure the ones that work. The most important thing is to look at the outcome of all the things you're trying and see the ones that work and try those again. Experimentation.
I think that was a really important point, that what works for one section doesn't work for a different section. We have a food section of our website, and if you say, where's the referral traffic coming from, we didn't know this until we had the dashboard in place. It's all Pinterest. And that's important for our food team to know. And if we said, oh, everybody at NPR needs to suddenly get on Pinterest, that's not true for our foreign correspondents.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Hi, I'm Michael Scholar with Public Radio International. I'm curious, a follow-up from an earlier question about moving people from the text on a page on a website to other things, audio for us and for NPR, video often for all of us and The Guardian. I was just curious about what sort of statistics you're seeing about how often people actually move to the multimedia, given that there's always this kind of tension in my mind between the web being a scanning medium, where people are looking at stuff quickly, looking on mobile, and then sitting down and for a video or an audio that'll take a few minutes.
Well, I will say that I always try to think like we are not our users. Like the way that I consume content is not the way that my parents, who don't work in journalism and don't live in Washington, D.C. or New York, consume content. And so the way that you figure out how people are using it is to look at data. And you can hypothesize things, but unless you have the data to back it up, it's just guesswork. I run a blog called NP Archives, which takes one piece from our archive every day and puts it on Tumblr. And you know, on the outset, it just looks like we're putting up a piece from our archives, but what we're really doing is experimenting with the language we use. We're experimenting with the types of pieces that do well. We're seeing how to write content in a way that makes more people listen to audio. And what we found is people really like being told how to listen to audio. So if you tell them, you know, listening to this piece will provoke this kind of feeling or sensation, thinking less topic-based, which is very much old school newspaper when you had a print product in front of you, and more like emotional-based, or how people listen to audio, which is the second screen experience for an activity. Like, what pieces should I listen to while cooking dinner tonight? What pieces should I listen to while I'm in the car with my kids and I don't want to hear anything about beheadings? How do we describe pieces in terms of activity? And I'm playing around with that. Not even on our website, just on a Tumblr, because it's easy to do. And that's really working. And so now I'm thinking, okay, well, how do I add metadata layers to our pieces that would describe our content in that way? That's a completely different project.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. There's no one magic answer. And I'm going to say the same thing as I said just now, which is try lots of things and watch the numbers and see which ones work.
I guess I'm curious, though, what sort of numbers are you seeing about people that'll go on NPR to audio versus how many are
I mean,
just
it's
reading?
so different, and I'm happy to show you our numbers, but it's so different on every piece. On a typical piece, about 6 to 10% of people listen to the audio.
And video on The Guardian?
I don't know the numbers off my head. I would have shared them if I knew them, but I don't know.
Okay, thanks much.
Hi there. My name is Greg Emerson. I spend a fair bit of time on analytics for Newsday in New York, and I wanted to take the unpopular position of coming out in favor of the page view, only to say that that a page view it at least shows an intention to read something, right? Mm-hmm. So you have metrics like time on site, engaged time, the amount of sharing a story gets, which, I mean, that tells you the value that the audience is placing on that piece of content once they've gotten there. But I feel like the page view, at least that click, is showing the reader's intention and sort of a subject area that they're looking for, or something that they at least clicked on, while leaving everything else behind, right? It's sort of a zero-sum game. I clicked on this, it took me away from where I am, and I did not click on the other things I could have clicked on that site. So in any case, I guess my question to you is, let's say we didn't have the page view to show that, at least that initial intent and something to get people into that story. Are there other metrics that you guys consider to be the most important to kind of get to that, at least that intention, at least that very basic macro level, this topic is something that interests me, whether I'm going to spend 10 seconds on it or 2 minutes on it?
I think we could easily have a whole session talking all about metrics and things like that. I think every single metric has got its problems, right? So that means there is no there's no silver bullet. There's no magic answer that is the metric that you must follow. To me, pick the one that works for you. I quite like page views because they are easily distorted, but it's pretty easy. Most people are quite aware of how you could distort page views. Right? We don't paginate our articles, we don't deliberately clickbait on our headlines, so most of those don't apply so much for us, but it makes it hard to compare against competitors with, for example. I'm personally really excited about attention minutes. I think together with page views, I think that will give us a really good insight of where we haven't met the expectation of the reader, that we've encouraged them to click through and join our site, but we haven't met their expectation. I think that's really important to know that, so we can understand where we're giving a better service to our reader. I'm also really interested around return rates and understanding, presenting in a sensible way, actually, of the people that read this article, these people have never been to our site before, these people have been here 5 times in the last week, etc. I haven't worked out how on earth to do that, or how on earth to present that in a way that people understand. But yeah, I think there are loads of interesting stuff. The most important thing is whether the people that are using your dashboard can understand what you're telling them. There's lots of clever metrics you can use, like dividing monthly unique users by daily unique users and things like that. I haven't met anybody on our organization, including myself, that actually understands quite what that metric means. That's not a great thing to show on a dashboard.
I'm really interested in what causes people to share. I could go into more detail, but I think we're over.
Yeah, I think we're in, yep.
I'm M. Kramer on Twitter. He's Tackers on Twitter. We're happy to take your questions. We'll be here all weekend.
Thank you.